Welcome to Northshore Prep Report's first, hopefully of many, weekly show. So season 1, episode 1. We're here at Game Day Cuts in Madisonville. Thank you to owner Brad Reshoe and allowing us to use this place and spotlight it. It's not just a haircut place for men, but
just got mine done.
You do beards, they have facials, they have scalp massages, all these other things here. So come check out Game Day Cuts. Pretty neat place. They've got everything you can imagine from it's like a sports museum in here. So Brad and his staff do a really good job. Want to welcome Chris Garrett.
Appreciate you having me.
Coach, I think once you're a coach, you're always a coach. You don't get to stop anyway and say that you're something else.
That's right. It's a good title to have. I can remember, always my old coaches, especially calling them coach and still being called coach is pretty special. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I say, when you walk around and you're in a grocery store or something and somebody says, "Hey, coach,"
that's it.
It feels good, right?
It does. It really does.
Talk to us a little bit now about life not coaching, right? I know you've been able to go catch some games and stuff. What you've been up to?
Yeah, so this is I figured out. This is the first time since 1987 I haven't been involved with a team of some sort. So. Yeah, it's different, but I'm enjoying it at the same time. I've got my son who I'm coaching in some flag football right now. He's actually at baseball practice right now. I dropped him off, but getting to spend more time with them, with my wife and kids, it's been a blessing and a lot of fun at the same time. So
yeah, well, look, it's an exciting time here on the North Shore. We have a ton going on. I think we certainly picked a perfect time to start this thing.
Yeah.
Some headlines this week. We've got soccer state championships. We'll get into that. Big news out of Covington. Coach Ken Sears stepping down from St. Paul's. I think it's 36 years at St. Paul's, 27 as the head football coach. We'll touch on that later in the football segment. And then we have boys and girls basketball playoffs. So girls are at it tonight in round 2.
Bracket for the boys dropped today, right?
Boys dropped today. So we've got all of those updates for the North Shore. And then, hey, softball kicked off last week. Baseball's 2 weeks in. We have tons to talk about in that space. So it's exciting. We're excited to get going.
Yes.
All right. So look, let's first get on to some soccer here. Give these kids some attention. Soccer to me is a little bit in this area. It's comparable to volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
The more you look at the area and the amount of talent and the amount of teams that make deep runs and make it to these championship games, it's impressive for just one area of the state.
Correct. And plus the fact that, just like everything else now, it's a year-round commitment for these athletes that go and play. And when it gets time to prep season, as it is right now for these finals, especially, it's really cool to see a bunch of local teams still in it and still producing what they're doing. So it's an exciting time for them too, as well.
Yeah, and if you're listening on a podcast, you can't see our screen. We always throw these graphics up on our YouTube channel so you can see it. But you've got North Lake Christian boys. They had a huge win on Saturday night at Pope John Paul to advance to the championship. I think that's their first time going for Coach Chetta and that crew since 2019. I tell people all the time covering the North Shore, the thing that is my least favorite is when two of our teams play each other because we can only go 1-1, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a big fan of North Shore and one of our teams to win, but great season for Pope John Paul. That's in the boys Division 4. That's our only boys team to make it to the state championship game. They'll play on the 25th at 7:30. They'll actually follow the Division 4 girls game, which Pope John Paul girls will be hosting Newman.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great matchup. Pope John Paul girls had a great year. St. Thomas Aquinas, who did not make the state championship, was the number 1 seed and had an absolutely insane season. So big shout out to the Falcons and that crew. And then other girls action in Division 3. You've got Hannon will be playing Parkview Baptist. That's a 1-3 matchup, really good matchup there. And then you have SSA, St. Scholastica will play against Turlings Catholic in the Division 2 girls matchup. So tons of action. We talk a lot about, and you brought it up, about the number of these athletes that's year round. I don't know really of any sport anymore that doesn't have some semblance of year-round commitment. Right.
Especially the older they get, it's tough. Especially speaking on the baseball side of it. When I love football guys that played baseball and vice versa, but there's so many kids that do try to do so much, but when they get to that high school age, it's difficult to focus on multiples. I'd love to see them do it, but it's hard to do. So shout out and hats off to those guys and girls who are representing the North Shore with these championships coming up this week.
Yeah, you touched on this, and it's really unique because at some point you don't believe that kids need to be singular in a sport.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more that kids do, the better it is, especially when they're younger. But the reality is, from a time commitment and committing to the craft, it's really hard to do a lot of different things, right? I think of kids right now. There's a kid, Noah Long, who's a basketball player at Pearl River. He's in the box score the other night. Pearl River plays this week in a first round playoff game, right? I've seen some girls who are basketball girls in softball box scores, right? They're just stepping right in and going to do it.
Well, that's like in the past couple of years, we would always play Coach Scavitt over at French Settlement, and we catch him early, and then that's a basketball powerhouse.
Yeah.
And we'd play him, and they'd be super competitive, but he'd have 8 starters playing basketball.
Yep.
And then we'd play him again 2 weeks later, and it's like a completely different lineup, and it's tough.
Yeah, I tell people in the world of power rankings, you can be strategic because you're going to get some good points out of those teams in the long run, but catch them early.
Right, exactly.
I was talking to Coach.
Good scheduling.
Talking to Coach Wick at Doyle this past week at the Autism Awareness tournament that Mandeville hosted. We'll touch more on that here in a second. But
shout out to Ace.
Yeah, big Ace.
Dude,
but we had, I think he said he had 4 or 5 girls that are on the basketball team, right? So he's without a lot of that group. But I think as a coach, it's a neat experience because you get to give some other girls some opportunities early on,
right?
Kind of knowing what you have, right? So yeah, look, let's move into girls basketball. We've got some really exciting things going on tonight. Everything's tonight. We just posted on our socials. Slidell is hosting West Monroe. West Monroe brought 2 Greyhound buses over to Slidell from North Louisiana. That's a big matchup. West Monroe beat Mandeville pretty good last week. Shout out to Mandeville's Alana Benoit. She's been a staple in this area for quite some time. I think they had 38 points in the game, and I think she scored 30 of them.
Right.
She's absolutely sensational. Salmon will be hosting Parkway, and Albany will be hosting Bruley. That Albany team's really good. Salmon, I got to watch play Slidell earlier in the year. Phenomenal matchup. 2 extremely talented teams. Don't be surprised if you see these teams later. The way the bracket's set up, Slidell and Salmon would meet in the semifinals to head to the state championship. So wherever that's at, which would be at Slidell High School, buy a ticket today.
We also got Hannon's playing tonight at Vanderbilt Catholic.
Yep, and we'll get to those.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
So
there it is.
Yep. So here we go. We got Hannon at Vanderbilt Catholic. Coach John over there does a great job. They've really, and I'll talk about Hannon here for a second. John does a really good job of that program.
Yeah.
They do a lot like the boys team does there. They play a very hard schedule early, and it pays off for them at the end. If you ask me halfway through the season if Hannon's going to be an 11 seed, I'm like, there's no shot, man. They got to figure some things out, and then they get in the district and they hit their stride. Bayham has been on fire for them. Lucy Timmons has really come on underneath and served that role there.
She gets that honest though with her.
Yeah, she does. And look, these other matchups, John Curtis is the #1 team in the state. That's going to be a tough matchup for Hammond. But Hammond, I got to see them earlier this year against a really good Slidell team, which I think Slidell is one of the best in the state. And Hammond's great. They're physical. They're big. They've got a Beecham girl that's extremely talented. Ponchatoula is similar. They've got to go to Scotlandville. And then look, last but not least, Laranja has been a program on the girls' side that has a ton of success. And they've had a ton of success for a long time. So don't be surprised if you see them go do something crazy and make a run here. Division III non-select, French Settlement might be the best team in the state. They are absolutely incredible. We got to see them against North Lake Christian a few weeks ago. Very talented group of ladies.
Yes. Like I said, it's a basketball. They're good in baseball too. Kane's a good buddy of mine, but they are known for their basketball over there, and they do it right.
Oh yeah. Springfield's a really interesting story. They've got a group of girls that have been together for a little while. Head coach over there coaches both boys and girls basketball team. Hats off to those guys. I don't know how they do it from a time and commitment standpoint, but he does a phenomenal job with both those programs. The Springfield girls and the Albany girls really put that area on the map. This I guess late winter for me, of giving those some coverage. Doyle's another program that's had a really good run this year. They're a 12 seed. They play at Ville Platte. And then Pine will be at Westlake. That's a really tough matchup for Pine. But hopefully they go and put up some points and see what they can do there. And then last but not least, our Division III select division, North Lake Christians at Geo tonight. That's a good matchup. Pope John Paul II. That's a team that's, to me, a little bit like Hannon. They're starting to play better, right, towards the end of the year. Ella Babin, she was our basketball player of the week this week. I think she had 5 threes last week. She's had multiple mid-20-point games here in the last few weeks. So for those of you that don't know, that's Coach Brian Babin, the head baseball coach. Right. He's got 37 kids who are all very good at everything they do. I think he's got a son he's in med school, be a doctor. So kudos to that whole family and them. And then St. Thomas Aquinas, they've had a really good year as well. So they'll be at Rose Pond. So that kind of wraps up the girls brackets and where we are tonight. I'm really looking forward to this because you kind of get to that Elite Eight piece, right? And I think college basketball and tournaments, right? So when I see those 12-5s and those 11-6s, I'm like, oh, we're going to get an upset. Right. But in high school basketball, you see, it's not always chalk, but it's pretty close. The way the power rankings work and those teams, they're seated pretty correctly. Right.
They usually even themselves out pretty good.
Oh yeah. So yeah, let's move into basketball, and I'll get some of these basketball graphics up here in just a second. But talking about basketball, one of the things that I have been extremely impressed with, and basketball is new to me covering into this area, and I'm a huge basketball fan. But one of the things that I've been most impressed with is not just the level of talent on the court, but the level of talent from the coaches here. Right. They run really, really good programs. Some of these coaches in my mind are absolutely elite. You can talk about Hannon and them over there, but it doesn't get much better than that group. He gets more out of that group than I think anybody.
Well, you know why. He's in Alabama.
Yeah. So for you LSU fans, you can turn it off now. No. But yeah, so let's go through these brackets real quick. I want to look at these individually, but these came out today. So if you haven't seen those, and if you're not on YouTube, we'll kind of go through them one by one. But Division I non-select, this is your 5A region. Salmon will be at Northshore. They actually played a couple weeks ago, and Coach Weinmunson and Salmon played Northshore really well. He was actually impressed with how they played that game.
He's again a buddy of mine that I consider a good friend, and he's a baseball guy, but I don't know if I think I can say it. He probably learned from his wife because she's a fantastic coach too, but he's doing a good job over there at Salmon as well. So that should be crosstown rival. Big environment, so that'll be a lot of fun there too.
Oh yeah, it'll be great. And look, Coach Carlin has that crew at Northshore really playing well. They're a 9 seed. They played a really tough out of district schedule. They played some out of state games. Mm-hmm. They played the John Curtis's. You name it, they played them. Now they didn't win one of those games. They were in every single one of them, but they didn't kind of finish and get over that hurdle, but they've really hit their stride here in district play. It's probably the most athletic, talented team that I've seen.
Right.
I bet they have 4 or 5 guys that can dunk on it. So it's an impressive group, and they play really good basketball. Obviously, Coach Josh Carlin coming from the Carlin tree.
Right.
If anybody knows basketball in that area, Coach Jay Carlin's a legend in the state. And then Parkway will be at Slidell. Slidell, they lost big to North Shore here recently, but Coach Krishna Green and that group, they're really talented. I like the group. I think they've got to find their way a little bit here in the playoffs. Hopefully they can kind of get on track with Parkway. Ducray was out against North Shore, so that did hurt them a little bit in the backcourt. But, the biggest difference for me with that team, Jalen Lucas and some of those kids, they're really talented. But when Jeremiah Birdlow is on and he's underneath and he's being big and physical in his presence, they're a different team. Mandeville will host Barb. That's an intriguing matchup for me. Mandeville's a team that plays with a little bit more finesse, but they're very well coached, a lot of backdoor stuff, and some really talented kids. And then, Covington will host Airline. Covington played North Shore a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
North Shore got the best of them there, but Covington, it's head coach Ryan Rushing's first year there.
Yeah.
He was at Salmon last year. He comes over to Covington. Monty Fontenot goes from Covington to St. Paul's. So lots of change there. But one thing that I'll say is what Coach Rushing has done is he's created some depth over the season. They've got what I think is one of the best players in the area in Jordan Bedford.
Right.
And that's a pro-con in my mind, right? Because some nights, if he's on,
right,
they're really good. And when he's off, they have to figure some things out without him. But when he's on, that's a completely different basketball team. Moving into Division I Select, St. Paul's. That's a tough matchup for them at Catholic. I think they played recently actually, and then Hammond at Huntington. Another tough matchup for Hammond. Hannon's got a bye. I'll touch on that St. Paul's team a little bit. They're a really talented team. And, Coach Fontenot's been around for a long time. They're very well coached. When they shoot the ball well, they're a different basketball team. They're hard to guard.
I actually saw Catholic play Hannon earlier this winter before Christmas, I think, and it was a physical game. But like you said, if boys at St. Paul can light it up, they should run with them. If not, pull away and win that ball game.
Yeah, look, you've got the Ballard kid at St. Paul's recently got an offer from UNO. He's really talented. Michelle on the outside and inside, they play really well. It really, to me, it comes down to their point guard Brady Pearson when he's playing under control and he's playing well and he's distributing well. They're a different team because they pass so well as a team that when they're moving on offense and then they're passing the ball, they're hard to stop. We'll move on to Division III non-select. St. Helena is one of the more intriguing teams that I've seen. They do a phenomenal job over there. If you all remember, we had Darian Baker, who was our football player of the year, athlete of the year for 2025. He is an incredibly gifted basketball player as well. He's committed to Pearl River to go play football there. But that team is very intriguing and one to watch. They have not played a lot of games. I think they've played 18, 19 games on the season. Most recent matchup for me that I think of is they went and played Pearl River at Pearl River and put it on Pearl River pretty good. And that's a really good and well-coached Pearl River team by Dylan Smith. You've got French Settlement, basketball, right? Hosted Oakdale. And then the Springfield boys will be at St. James. Any time you go to St. James for anything, I don't care what it is, it's going to be difficult for you. And then last but not least, in Division III non-select, Doyle has earned the bye, which is crucial. Yeah, right? You can talk about that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then Division III select, Independence has had a great year. I think they're 26, 27 wins. They'll be hosting Newman. North Lake Christian will be at Episcopal Baton Rouge. St. Thomas Aquinas will be hosting Collegiate Baton Rouge. And Pope John Paul will be at Lafayette Christian. I think these are all very intriguing matchups. I don't see anything that would tell me that we can't win one of these games. I think will be in it in all four. In fact, that Pope John Paul team, when the Arguelles kid is on, they're really good.
Right.
But he's a very, very talented kid. In fact, there's a two-sport guy that I know of that starts for Pope John Paul, Tatum Miller. He's a pretty good baseball player too. I think Coach Babin's relied on him on the mound a little bit this year, but he's a basketball player as well. So hopefully Coach Babin has him when he needs him. and then last in Division II non-select, we talked about this Pearl River team a little bit. Pearl River beat Lakeshore a couple of weeks ago to win that district, or I'm sorry, to be second in that district. That's kind of an old rival in the basketball space. But Pearl River has had probably the best basketball season they've had in 30 years there. I think they host for the first time in 30 years, they host a playoff game.
Wow.
So huge shout out to Coach Dylan Smith and that crew. They've got Braden Hutchison, who was a quarterback for them this past season. I got to coach him in the LFCA All-Star game. Absolute competitor, rebounds the heck out of the ball.
And again, that being a crosstown rival, it's going to be rocking, I'm sure.
Yes, it will. So I think you nailed it already. I think we'll have somebody there for that opening round game. And then Albany at Ellender. So, that's your kind of your recap on the basketball side. I think there's some really, really intriguing matchups. I'm excited kind of to see, the first round to me, sometimes you say, I'm not really that interested, right? But in this case, there's some really, really solid matchups, and I'm excited to watch it. I kind of wish sometimes, and people ask me, Mike, how do you follow all this? How do you know it, right? Well, I'll tell you a secret. It's all out there,
right,
if you want it, right? Varsity Sports Now does a really good job. NFHS does a really good job. LHSAA does a really good job. A lot of teams will air their own YouTube stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'll spend a lot of time late at night watching high school sports in our area, right? So, but tremendously talented group of people. Let's move into softball a little bit here. I want to talk about, I had the luxury of going to the opening day of the Autism Awareness Tournament, right? Something that Mandeville does, assistant coach Trevor Bergeron. Yeah. He's got a son that's affected by it. I know you do too, but talk about that a little bit and what that means.
Well, first off, Coach Bergeron has been A1 for the longest time forever that I've known, even before his son was born and came into this. But he is one of those guys. There's a ton of them, but he's one of those guys that, just salt of the earth people that, you want people like that in your circle. And he's one of them. And they've done this tournament for, I think, 3 years now. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. And, third year.
It's really expanded and gotten big. I think there was 50 something, almost 50 games, it seemed like. But,
yeah. There was a lot. Yeah. I can tell you I was pretty tired.
I bet. Even when he was in the baseball world, 10 years ago, coaching against when he was at Mandeville there, I just got to meet him and throughout the process of what his son goes through and his wife with that. And then with my family, we'll see him at church. We'll see him in, at different therapies. We'll cross paths. And it's just always, hey, how's it going? What can we do? He's just a great guy. So I was very happy to see such a big turnout for such a good cause. And he actually started it 7-8 years ago where he, on a small scale, but he had all the local high school baseball teams represent. We had a game, and it was a big deal. So I'm really proud of you, Trevor, and praying for you guys always. So just glad to see that it turned out to be such a big deal, and it is, and hopefully it just keeps getting bigger and better.
Well, what I tell people all the time, it's a really good example of the North Shore area community.
Absolutely.
One thing that I love about North Shore Prep Report, and one thing that I wanted to do when we started this was, how do we bring the entire area together, right? How do we, and it's events like that
Absolutely.
that help so much, and you had, we didn't just have teams from up here, you had Destrehan was here, and Chappelle was here, and I think Haynes, and you had a bunch of these schools that come up to support that cause.
Right.
It's so neat. And look, as a side note, some of the best softball you're going to find in the state, right?
Yeah.
Talking about that, I'm a baseball guy. You're a baseball guy. But there's some baseball guys who came from the baseball space that are in softball now. Coach Jeremy Harper at Ponchatoula, Coach Kyle Wick at Doyle, and there's more, right? That have really had a big influence on the sport. And one thing that I'll say that, and you hear it, and you have to be there to see it, and they all say it, the speed of the game.
It's so much more fun to watch than baseball. As a baseball guy, it's so much more fun to watch softball.
It really is. It really is. And, I'll talk about a few games that I got to see. I got to catch Destrehan. Coach Craig Perry there does a really good job. They beat Northshore and Coach Nettie. Coach Nettie's got a pretty good group there. I think try to figure some things out, but they're going to be just fine. They've got some really talented players. I got to see Ponchatoula and Pearl River. Pearl River has a new head coach, Alyssa Leak. In the fourth inning, I would have told you Pearl River's got a shot, right? Now they're missing some basketball girls, right? But we interviewed Coach Harper after the game, and he said, "Look, fist fight. Like they gave us all we wanted for those 4 innings." Now,
he tells it like it is too.
Oh yeah, and we will have Coach Harper on here, and I'll warn you ahead of time: don't ever be fooled by how bad he says they are. They're always really good.
So he's the Brian Babb in the softball.
Okay. Yeah, we we can go there.
Gotcha.
But when you talk to Coach Harper, and the reason he's so good is he sees things differently, right? And
he's created a legitimate I think he's been in softball now 6-7 years.
Yep.
I didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah, that was pun intended.
If you're driving over there, I challenge you to pull off and just look at what he's created as a program. Not just, he's got a phenomenal, beautiful facility. They're constantly doing stuff in the community like you talked about, but he has created an absolute program to where people want to come there, people to play softball for him. And he's done a wonderful job. And there's a lot of people around here that do that, but he stands out in my mind in particular. But it's cool to see what all he's done over there in a short amount of time. He was in the state championship 2 seasons ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
So he's doing it right.
And look, he'll be back.
Yeah,
knock on wood, he'll be back. He's got a really talented roster. Abby Dagro, who I just think the world of as a player. She's incredible. I got to interview her after the game. Really sweet young lady. But when she's in the circle and she's on, she's different. And when she's at the plate and she's on, she's different. So I'm recording the game, right? I'm kind of getting at bats, and I get a good strikeout from a Pearl River pitcher who's a transfer from I want to say like Picayune High School or something like that. But really talented young lady. But I'm recording Abby, and then I go around and I hear the crowd go crazy, and of course Abby hits a home run. And I missed it, right? But I told her there'll be many more of those. So yeah, she's been really talented. There's another young lady, Raelle Wheat. I think she's committed to LSU Eunice. Okay. Really talented. They've got, you talk about the program, nobody pinch runs like him. Right. He'll sub out. He knows everything is very much so strategy, and he sees it with an eagle eye. So he's talented. But they were fun to watch. Doyle, they were without. I think we talked a little bit about this. They were without some of their starters, but they're coming off of a state championship dream season last year. Now they lost some really, really talented.
That's a softball factory in that area too.
Yes, it is.
Produce softball players.
And Coach
little to now.
And Coach Wick and I talked about that. Yeah. He said, it wasn't hard to say no,
right?
When Doyle asked, and then look, some other teams I want to talk about. French Settlement. I did not know of Malloy Miles. I'll be honest with you. 2 weeks ago, she has been absolutely outstanding for French Settlement on the mound. She's a junior and an Ole Miss commit. On the first week, she threw 14 innings, gave up no hits, no runs, 3 walks, and 36 strikeouts
in one weekend.
In a weekend, right? So she was obviously our player of the week, and now I have a hard time going, okay,
somebody's got to beat that.
She might have to be
right.
She might have to be player of the week every week.
High.
That's right. But she's very talented. Some other programs that I'm really excited to see. Coach Becky Lambert at Hannon.
The GOAT.
She is the GOAT. She is the softball legend. She's got skins on the wall. She's done it for a long time.
She's very intimidating to work alongside of her when I was practicing and she's practicing right beside me. I was blessed to have a daughter that played for her, and they get after it. They absolutely get after it. And my daughter won 2 state championships of Becky's 37, however many she has, but would have gotten 3 had the COVID year. That might have been one of the best teams that they had that year. It was they were well on their way and got shut down. So
and look, this is a neat stat. For the second year in a row, Coach Lambert and Hannon have no seniors on their roster. Right now, don't be fooled because they have some very, very talented young ladies.
That's right.
The Rick, Cody Ricks, Riley Williams. I'm going to miss some here, but they are extremely, extremely talented, and they're going to put up big numbers at the plate. For them, I think, and I'll say it, for them, they're going to have to throw well, right? But if they have to go toe to toe with somebody at the plate, they've got the talent to do it. I forgot about Taylor, Chloe Renton Williams,
so many
Cody Ricks, and look, there's some young ones. There's some sophomores in that group that are very talented. So they'll be extremely fun to watch. And then look, I got to see Mandeville play a little bit, and Coach Helmstetter, he's been a big supporter of ours. They can swing it. Now, they're going to have to find ways to win those close, low-scoring games, which in softball is going to be really important. But they've got some young ladies who can put up some numbers. So it'll be interesting to see that. So what we'll do next week is we'll have our softball graphics up. We'll have standings like we do for the boys. We'll have our players of the week. We'll have our stat leaders. So we'll be able to highlight them.
They're just boys are about 10 days ahead of them.
Yes,
almost 2 weeks.
That's correct. And then Mardi Gras kind of stalled the girls a little bit, so they really only had half of a week of it going. But we'll get them some coverage, and it's near and dear to me. I've got a daughter who's 7 years old, so people say thank you so much for covering the girls. I hope I can cover them just like we cover anything else, right? So that's kind of the goal of what we do. So heading to baseball. I know that we'll talk a good bit about this because this is your space. And this is, we started Northshore Prep with covering 6 baseball teams last year. You brought up Brian Babin, and I've got to give a huge shout out to him. Without Coach Babin, I might still be at 6 teams, but he was pretty adamant about, nobody covering the Slidell area. So, we go over there and cover that. And I could not have picked a better time to go cover that area because between Pope, Slidell, and Northshore, it was and Pearl River. But last year, those 3 teams made big runs. I got to call a couple of Pope's games. I know you got a Pope game tomorrow that you're calling for Varsity Sports. But enamored with that area and Coach Babin. But let's move into the districts and kind of talk about these matchups. Chalmette is a team which, for anybody listening and watching, yes, we cover Chalmette on the North Shore. Chalmette is in District 7-5A with the North Shore teams. And I won't speak for their coaches, but I can tell you that they all kind of wanted to be there again. And unfortunately, they'll be in the Catholic League. So they won't be in that area. But who knows? Maybe we'll continue growing and we'll pick those guys up in the Catholic League as well. But Chalmette, they've hit the ball really well. They've pitched really well. It's no surprise they're in 11. In power rankings early on, they're sitting at 6-2. They play at the same park that Nunez does. Nunez plays at Chalmette High School. We'll talk about Nunez here in a little while as well. But they've got some returning kids who can swing it. And it's your classic look of a Chalmette team. They're big and strong.
Doug Faust over there he's one of the best ones that does it. He's got a little hand in ties as well, but they do have some returners, but they lost a lot too. And to see them where they are is really no surprise to me. Just the fact that, he does it the right way and they're just that type of, kid that gets after it, that parish kid that, they are bred to play ball and they do it and do it well. They're always a tough out whenever you play them. We've played them twice last year and once the year before. And it was just, you're scratching and clawing for everything you can get. And you earn whatever you get, but that's a testament to him and just them in general as a program.
And if you're a pitcher pulling into Suarez Field. You don't want to pitch there.
Keep the ball down.
The ball flies out of the park
Yes,
there.
it does.
So it's a fun place to watch it. Yeah, we'll move on to Fontainebleau. I'm extremely high on Fontainebleau going into the season. I think there's a big difference in experience and having older guys.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very experienced young group.
Yes.
Right. Now they've got some returning guys that I'm enamored with. The Davidson kid has been on fire for them in the middle of the lineup.
Right.
Gage Fradella is new to the lineup. He didn't play much at all last year. He's been playing first. He's a double machine. I mean, every time I'm in the box score, he's hit doubles. Jackson Hill, I thought a month into last season, was the best player I had seen on the North Shore.
Right.
He was gap-to-gap power. He can run. He had his second ACL injury in 2 years. He's come back. He's starting to swing it, and you're starting to see it. And then they've got Coach Nolan and Coach Lopete over there. They've got a group. Tanner Conley, probably the best left-handed arm in the state in that 28 class.
I saw him when he was he's a 28. So
he's a 28. Yep.
So when he was probably in 7th grade, maybe even 6th, I saw a kid hitting over a D-bat, and it sounded different. I was like, who is that? I said, is he off for Christmas break somewhere? No, coach, he's a 7th grader. I said, where's he? And I tried to do my pitch. I'm not a real good salesman, I don't guess, but I would have loved to have had him. But he is pretty special, not only on the mound, but he can swing it a little bit too. So he's, for the longest over there, they had a whiteboard on the wall with exit velo, and he was atop of the list as as a 13-year-old kid. So he's special. Well,
he's in my mind a true two-way kid. Mm-hmm. He I've talked to him. He wants to play. He wants to be a two-way in college as well. Right. I think he knows where he wants to go. So when he's a junior, we'll see if that happens. But rooting for him. He threw 9 innings last week in 2 different starts. No hits, no runs. Walked 4 and struck out 17. Hit a home run. He's been an extra base hit machine. There's another kid, Sawyer Shane, who's a sophomore. Mm-hmm. Played football as well. Is very talented. Wyatt Robinson, their shortstop. I could go on and on. The Blomkins kid at catcher. They've got a good shot, and they're sitting here at 5-3. You'll talk to Coach Babin about this. I don't think I've ever seen it, and I'm watching, online. Pope beats them. I think Fontainebleau walks 4 and hits 2.
Yeah.
Hits 2 batters for Pope to win the game. Right. And then it's either the night before or the night after, but Fontainebleau's up on John Curtis. I want to say 4 or 5 runs in the last inning, and Curtis comes back and wins it.
Yeah. Well, that's like you said a while ago, Ricky and they're young but experienced. Sometimes you baptize by fire, and they did that last year, and they were competitive last year as a young group. It pays off on the backside. Like you said, it's all about, you talk about how you schedule up and just go play, and it definitely pays off.
No doubt. We'll move on to North Shore. North Shore, they took it on the chin a little bit here this week. They had a rough week. They go to Mandeville. Coach Benoit and that crew beats them, and then they host Acadiana for 3 games.
Solid.
Very solid. And now another crazy stat line, and Coach Hodges will not want to hear this again, but I want to say they walked 12 times, got 1 hit, and didn't score a run. Mm-hmm. And Connor Smith, who has been really good on the mound, I think that same game threw 6 1/3, maybe 1 hit.
I'm hoping to see him tomorrow.
You'll love it.
No, I've seen it. I've seen it from. I'm excited to see it, not from the other dugouts. What I'm saying,
yeah,
I'd like to, because he's as good on the mound as he is at short.
Yeah,
he is in the box. He's as well-rounded of a kid, an athlete as you're going to see. And like you said, Coach Hodges and them, they licking their wounds a little bit and probably eager to get back on the field. And that ought to be a really good game tomorrow night with them and Pope.
Oh yeah, and then they've got North Shore's interesting because they're extremely talented. They're not. Don't be fooled by a 3-game series.
Not at all.
Coach doesn't want to hear this, but I'll say it might be the best thing could happen for him.
Sometimes you're right.
Sometimes you'll look later on in the season and go, we needed that one a little bit, but they're a really talented group. Coach Cam Lewis over at Slidell, they had a fantastic run last year. They lose Troy Green and Braden Calamari, Superman, what we call him. He's a folklore. I'll remember that season he had last year for a long time. Right. For folks that don't remember, he hits 2 grand slams in one game, one to take a lead and one to win it in a walk-off in a playoff game.
That's fun. That's hard to top that. But yeah.
So he's at Nunez now. Troy Green's at LSU Eunice. Both those kids are going to have phenomenal careers. I don't know much about Salmon. I've talked to a couple of those kids. I'll be heading over there, I think next week actually, to meet with them and go over that and get some stuff there. But that's a program that has a lot of history. Coach Babin came from there. Mm-hmm. They had some very, very talented teams.
Oh, you talk about gritty.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that program will be back where it needs to be. Moving into 6-5A, Mandeville, I call it a successful week. I think Coach Benoit would too. They go toe-to-toe with Sam Houston. They took 2 of 3 from Sam Houston last year. They lose 2 of 3 against Sam Houston. But what I've seen from Mandeville this year that I have not seen from Mandeville, and I'm talking 6-7 years, is that if they're down, they're not out.
Correct.
And they're swinging it.
Yeah.
Like they're putting up some runs. And that's been kind of the kryptonite of Mandeville over the last few years.
Right.
Is can you score enough runs?
Correct. They've always had the arms.
Mm-hmm.
I say always. They always have at least 8 arms or 2. But they've got not to put any pressure on you, Brady, but it's the pieces are there. So don't sleep on Mandeville at all. They're a young group that has a lot of experience as well, and play a murderer's row schedule as well. And it's going to pay off for them, I do believe.
Well, look, they played Sam Houston here. Coach Nolan and Fontainebleau go to Sam Houston Friday. They played 1 on Friday and 2 Saturdays.
Yes.
So, Coach Chad Hebert, he's got one of the best programs in the state, if not, the best according to some. But he's got a ton of arms and a lot of talent, and he lifts. He lifts a lot. And then we'll move on to St. Paul's. Coach Scanlon and that crew have a tough start.
Yeah,
I think they started 0-3. I think they won their last 4. It's an interesting piece there because St. Paul's, for me, is always going to be one of the talented teams,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
They're the Catholic school on the North Shore. They've got a ton of numbers. They've got a lot of kids that go there. Sometimes that's harder, right? How do you manage all of that?
Right, because traditionally they're one of the better groups around, and my buddy Scanlon, like you said, it's stepping into that role as the head coach now there. He's got a lot of tools to play with, and the fun part is trying to figure it all out early right now to when you get to April that it's clicking. And other than the fact they play in a super tough district, I think he's going to figure that out, and they're going to be a typical St. Paul's team come late March, early April. They'll be firing on all cylinders as well.
Yeah, well, look, I could go up and down that lineup. I think they're extremely talented. I think once they figure it out, who's going to be where and where they're going to hit, it's a really talented group, and they've got some kids on the mound that can hold their own and have done so, early on in the season.
And the Villa kid, and I saw him. He played right field the other night.
Mm-hmm.
He can swing.
He's
a man.
He's a big boy. They did lose Cody Corrales. Cody Corrales decided to step away, and I think he's going to focus on the football thing. But it's St. Paul's. It opens up an opportunity for somebody else to step in center field and see what can happen. So luckily for them, they've got some guys. Coach Drag in that group at Covington. Coach Drag does a phenomenal job. Yeah. And I'll say this, and it's not a knock on the baseball side because I'm enamored with Covington High, but the program that Coach Drag runs is so impressive to me. He is so focused on grades and getting those kids to be great young men. Yeah. Their off-season workouts, their in-season workouts. I don't know of a team that has a better GPA year in and year out than those guys, but he wants to really, really raise young men to be great grown men, and he does that.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret about Coach Drag. I was blessed enough to be his assistant for the better part of about 16 seasons. And he wants you to think he's an old gruff that keeps everything under his hat. But, and he does. But once you get to know him and realize he truly, truly cares about his players, not necessarily on the field first either. he wants to see them succeed in the classroom. He wants to see them, whatever they decide to do once they leave his program, they're always a part of that, part of his program. And, he is the best, in my opinion, and I'm buddies with everybody we've talked about already, but he's the godfather of the North Shore to me, because I consider him a really close friend, and learn from him. And so they're young this year as well, and taking some knocks right now, but I promise you, every game they get on the field with you, it's going to be a dogfight.
There's no doubt. And we'll talk about his team a little bit. Funny story, I'm in high school. I went to Destrehan High School, and I think we played either a spring game or something in my senior year at Covington in football, and we were in the baseball locker room, right? And they had their stat leaders, right? And I'll never forget, I always want to know who Drag was, right? Because he was a guy in high school. There's no doubt about it.
And you know why? He's so good at what he does, right? You know where he went to college?
Alabama. I guess we're gonna say it, right?
Coach Goff was the reason they're, what it is.
That's right. We're getting a little Alabama flavor over here. Well, look, we got to say Coach Cam Lewis and that Slidell group went over there recently and did some damage, right?
Yeah, so he took them to the Holy Land. That he got to experience Rickwood Field. I took a group up there a couple years ago and told him, I said, man, because he's got some Montgomery ties. He coached up there, so I said, man, you got to go play at Rickwood, especially now that they've changed it around since MLB played there 2 summers ago. It's unbelievable. And he texted me Saturday afternoon. He says, you were right. This place is incredible.
Yeah. Great experience for those kids. He's got some really talented, young ones. He's going to be fine. He's got a great program there. They're going to be in good shape. And then Hammond and Ponchatoula are both, struggling a little bit. Ponchatoula is interesting for me. Going into this spring, I was really excited about a couple of things. I didn't realize it, but one of their returning pitchers, I say one of them, who I thought was one of the best pitchers, Michael Ferris, I think transferred to either Denham Springs or Live Oak, one of those. And then Jeremiah Bess, who's at St. Thomas Aquinas now, was there last year as well. So, they lost a couple pretty good players, but, Ponchatoula is one that even in baseball, it's going to be district play.
Right.
And they're going to get a couple people.
Yep.
They're going to get you.
Coach Tribble is still Coach Tribble, and he can wave that wand and figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be fine.
They'll be just fine.
We're very early right now.
Now, look, moving into District 7 4A, I get to talk to a lot of people around the state and get to go on shows. I cannot say enough about how good this district is.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really good last year. I'll be honest with you. I don't think last year's teams are as good as this year's teams, top to bottom.
I agree.
We'll start with Pearl River at the top. They've had a great start. Coach Coovey on there. He's, it feels like they lost a lot, and they did. They lost Jake Clifton and some of those kids. Big Diesel. But Zan Harwell is a two-way that can pitch it. He's been really good with the bat. Aiden Ward, who kind of came on last year, he had a couple home run game this week or last week. He's been pitching a little bit for him now as well. They're a talented team, and Coach Cuvion kind of gets the best out of that group.
Yep. They were tough. They're tough out anytime you play them too. We've even when Buddy was there 2 years ago, and then Hannon, we went in there playing them for a district championship last year and couldn't get over that hump, and it was frustrating because they just do it, and it's like they get you down and then they jump on you right when they need to most, and they're a frustrating group to play. I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
sleep better during the spring, right. That's for sure. Laranja's another one. I'll be honest with you. I can easily mix up Laranja and Pearl River a lot. Mm-hmm. I think their makeup's very similar. Laranja has had a lot of success. They start out 5-0, gangbusters. Mm-hmm. They lose 3 in a row to St. Thomas Aquinas, which we'll talk about St. Thomas Aquinas here in a minute. But that in those 3 games, either team could have won that. Yeah. And I think that's another one that, like North Shore's, getting swept by Acadiana, I think those guys are going to look back and go, hey,
They
maybe
can point to right there where
maybe we
turn
needed that a
around.
little
Yeah,
bit, right?
exactly.
But they've got an ace in Hayes Holton, who is an absolute flamethrower. He's committed to Texas. He's really good. His brother Hyatt Holton, really good for them. The Matherns.
The Matherns are.
I don't know that I've seen two better brothers.
I'm telling you
that can. They're hitting number 1 and 2 in the lineup.
Yeah,
and they outdo each other every night.
Yep.
Because you look at one and you went, oh, 2 for 3 with a double and 2 RBIs. You look at it, oh, never mind.
Imagine
3 for 4 with a double, a home run, and 2 RBIs.
I'll tell you what, those 2 kids especially are. You talk about Hayes. Hayes is great.
Mm-hmm.
Hayes is phenomenal. Has been for a while and has a bright future. But those 2 are just as important to that staff as Hayes is, in my opinion, because it's a 1, 2, 3 punch that, we caught him last year in district. Obviously, Hayes, we split with him in district, but then we caught him again in the playoffs. And I'm thinking, good Lord, we got to get 2 from this, But when it was over and done with, those 2 guys were the first ones to come talk to me afterwards. And then this past fall, when we play them in football, they don't play football, but I was just happened to be on the sidelines, and I hear a guy from behind, coach, like you talked about, hey, coach, and I turn around and it's the Mathern. And he just wanted to come say, hey, they're just phenomenal human beings. And I'm excited to see them, how they progress through this season and moving forward. Because I guess I can talk about it as an outsider. I had them at the top of the list for that district for this year to really put the pressure on everybody else. I don't want to make a prediction, but if I had to, that would be my lean right now, because that's a fun group to watch.
Well, I'll tell you what, we didn't plan this, but when we're done, let's make some predictions here in baseball. We'll see how it works out, and some people can send us some hate mail. We'll be somebody's best friend.
We'll send that to Brad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, send your complaints to Game Day Cuts here in Madisonville.
That's it.
Moving on to Franklinton.
Clay Tyson. That's just the pedigree and the stuff right there. Him,
gosh,
brother Evan and Belcher.
Yeah,
they have baseball running through their blood, whether they want to or not. And I got to see them earlier already this year. I drove up and saw them, and they're Franklinton. They just get after it. Like I said, they put pressure on you. They throw strikes. It's a beautiful facility. And that was actually my first coaching job when I moved here. I'm from Alabama, like you said, but when I moved here, I coached at Franklinton my first 2 years. And we made the semifinals both years. I was like, this is easy. But they always have athletes.
Look, I'll say this, and some people could like it, some people could not. But Franklinton High School, to me, as a whole, they do a lot right.
Yep.
They, the principal, it starts with the principal.
Shane Smith,
Shane Smith, he's a former coach.
Yep.
He brought in Salta Formaggio there for football, Trajan and him coming back. And, that place is unique. Coach from Hannon just left to go over there and coach defense over there,
Kelly.
Coach Don Kelly. So it's a unique place. And I think that team's going to be really talented. Jojo Burkhalter's a really talented kid on the leadoff spot, brings a lot of speed. I know the Cinceno kid is one that Coach is high on. Barber's played really well. Pugh goes 3 for 4 with a home run and 5 RBIs the other night from behind the plate. And then I can't forget my tight end, Dalton Freeman. He's been hitting in that 6-7 hole and really producing.
But you nailed it. You said a while ago about the community itself, how they rally around, not just baseball, but football.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't here when Covington High football was magnificent, like huge. Everybody, it still is an awesome place with a lot of great traditions, but that's Franklinton. I got to experience that for 2 years, but their community, and it shows you when community gets behind your athletic programs, they blossom, and Covington High in the 90s, football was king. They'd shut the town down on Friday nights to go watch the football. That's how it is in Franklinton, and it spills over into basketball and then into baseball. So they do it right up there in Washington Parish.
Well, somehow there's not a McGee there. But
give it time.
Just give it. McGee's and Burkhalters. I feel like they fall off trees. Crazy over there. They're everywhere, and they're extremely talented. Yep. We'll talk about Hannon a little bit. I know this team. Coach Cass Hargis in year one. I think from a coaching standpoint, he's done one of the more impressive things here in the first 2 weeks.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is, and he and I talk a lot about this. He doesn't have a young team. He has an inexperienced team.
Right. Exactly.
You had 10, 11 seniors
11
last year. That
7 of them that went on to play.
That's right. So it was a large group of kids that, unfortunately, what happens is the kids underneath them you don't get as many reps, right? And it's not like I'm gonna laugh here because I don't think I've ever seen a team do what y'all did last year.
Right.
I'm not sure there was a worse batting average
Oh, it was
in the state for a team that won that many games.
Right.
But I think back to it might have been a game at Newman, somewhere on the South Shore that y'all won late in about the maybe this time of the year that I went, man, they just keep winning these close games.
It was probably Bell Chase.
Maybe what it was. Did y'all faced Richardson that
and he
night?
struck us out 14 times.
Yeah, and y'all won that game.
And we won 2-1.
That's right. And I don't know if y'all had Patrick Kennedy or Stemple on the mound that night. I think it might have been Kennedy actually, but Patrick's now at Nunez and he's getting some time. Owens at Southeastern, but I can't talk enough about that team that you had last year. But fast.
We'll set aside a show just for that.
Yeah, yes, as a special group. Fast forward to this year, and I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of these kids. We talk about all of this, but I've been really impressed with kind of the lone senior, Brendan Lopez, getting some playing time and hitting the ball well. He's hitting top of the lineup. Hunter Lay, who's big time wide receiver at Hammond last year. He's one of the more athletic kids you've been around.
Chance Boatman is another senior, but he was one that this time last year we were playing 5-6 games a week. We leaned on him early. But then once we got to district and all, we kind of had our rotation set. He kind of, just by luck of the draw, didn't get as many innings as he probably wanted. Yep. But he's stepped up and has thrown phenomenal for them for 3 games now. He has doing well.
He has. Romero's hit the ball well. Jacob Gobert's kind of been their cleanup guy. I think the world of him. I think on the mound, he's got an opportunity to play at the next level.
Yeah, he's coming off a big injury. That, he didn't even play with us last year. Elbow stuff, but he has battled back through that and is tearing the cover off the ball. Yeah, he throwing really it well across the. He's still itching to get on the mound. I don't think he's been released to do that yet, but he got the release to play on opening day, and it's like he never missed a beat. So,
and you talk about a different sound. He's had some at bats recently that look different, and I can't not give Carson Massey some credit behind
that was my next
behind the plate
because he's held the glue for that staff that we had last year as a 10th grader. And he caught in the playoff game. He started in the playoff game as a freshman at Lafayette Christian 2 years ago.
Yep.
So he's really the only returning on-field guy that they have.
Yeah.
And I love what Cass said. It might have been with your interview a couple weeks ago, but he said, yes, he loves where his guys are at, and I do too. But his biggest thing is to see not how good they are in February, but in April. And they're definitely trending in that direction. So,
yep. And look, moving on to Lakeshore, they lose, a kid that I thought was one of the best players in the area last year. He's a Delgado now. He was phenomenal on the mound and at the plate for them. But what I was concerned with Lakeshore was they've got some depth on the mound, but they don't have a lot of innings, right? That part's going to come. I was a little concerned of where are the hits and runs going to come from, right? Now, they've got them. Grant Bouillon, I think, is one of the best switch hitters around. In fact, I saw a video in Tanner Conley's no-hitter against Lakeshore this weekend. Bouillon hits one from the right side of the plate, foul for a home run. That's barely foul, right? He's talented, but they've got some not young guys, but newer guys that have stepped in. JJ Velthouse has been great for them. He had a game-winning hit the other night. He's gotten some extra base hits. Landon Dragon has shown up in the box score a little bit and getting some stuff. The Trish kids kind of doing it at the plate as well. So they're another one that by the time district play comes, they'll fist fight you.
Yeah.
And they're gonna win some games.
Yeah, and Jacob, Coach Leeward over there he'll have them again. It's all I always talk about. We're going into week 3 right now, And week 3 is kind of when this is week 3, right?
Yeah, week 3. Yep.
That was always when I would always tell my guys that's when you can kind of see the separation a little bit of not only teams that you're playing, but your own team. When you kind of have your core group of who is going to contribute for you on the field, but at the same time, you got that core group that might not be ready yet. And how can you hold that together as a coach to prevent your own separation in the dugout? And Jacob does a good job over there of every time you go over there and play them, it's like you said, a dogfight in there. He's going to have them ready to roll come district time. We're almost halfway there, I guess. It usually starts about week 4, week 5, so they'll be ready to roll. This district's so fun, man.
Well, look, if you're a baseball fan, we've covered 3 districts so far, and I can tell you we're going to cover 2 more, and all 5 are absolutely phenomenal.
Solid.
Very solid and led by a great group of men who do a really good job of teaching the game and teaching life to these young men. So kudos to them. District 8 3A, we picked up 8 3A during football season. Thank goodness, because they had some really good teams. Jewel Sumner made that big run during football season, and Pine had a really good year. Ameet's always talented in football. Albany, under Coach Michael, had some success and coming along. But on the baseball side, you look at power rankings and look at records, right? It's a talented group. I don't know much about Bogalusa. I am going to go head out there. We talked about that before the show, right? They're sitting there at number 3 in a 4-0 record. They've scored a lot of runs and not given up much, but I haven't seen them. So we'll be able to talk about them coming up. Springfield, Coach Salim, have to say kudos to him and congrats. He got the head football coaching job there as well. So he does a really good job. He's been very involved in that Springfield community now for a little while. So it's great to see that transition. They've got a talented team.
Right.
There's a kid, and I had sent a message, I think last week. I think his name's Colt Lee Rett, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but he has 2 or 3 hits every night, and he's in the box score every night with extra base hits. Looking at their schedule, and I did this a couple hours ago, they've got a really good chance to go win a lot of games this year. I'm excited to go get out there and watch them. And I think this is another one when district play starts, in Springfield. And, we talked about Jewel Sumner, right? We talked about them, I think a couple of weeks ago. I was out of town and we were sending some messages back and forth. There's a young man, Ori Titus, who I'd seen some film on him in the summer. Maybe it was at like a PBA event or something like that. And on the mound, he's 6'2", 185 pounds. And then he comes out and, he's hitting the ball well. He's throwing the ball well. So I'm excited to get out and watch those guys. Doyle is another one that I think is going to be very good. Zach Ray, who is their catcher. He'll throw a little bit. He's one of the more talented young. I think he's a 27. One of the more talented kids that you'll see. Albany, I'll say, is surprising, but watching them and getting to see them a little bit, that's another very, very talented
they were really good
baseball
last year
team.
too.
Yep. Pine's another one that's talented. They lost some really close games this year so far, but I'll be interested to see kind of how they develop. And then Ameet really hasn't played yet. But this district, I'm really excited to learn a lot more about. I'll say I'll put 8 3A a little bit in where 7 4A was for me last year, where I didn't really know a whole lot about them early, covering some other areas. But I'm excited to get out. I think there's some great coaches, there's absolutely great young men, and this is a lot like Franklinton. These communities, they support their high school athletics. So I'm really excited about that. Moving into 9 2A, I know you've got Northshore at Pope John Paul tomorrow. Pope wins late today.
They did.
At Hannon.
They had I've got to deal with Cass. I've seen Hannon play 3 times this year, and all 3 were lost. So I said, I ain't coming back. And I actually yelled at him across the parking lot today on the way. I said, Coach, I ain't coming. He said, don't come. So I didn't.
I think he'll support that message.
But they close game tonight. They actually played 8 innings. They went to not overtime, extra innings in an hour and less than an hour and 20 minutes.
It's an efficient baseball.
Yeah.
Lots of strikes thrown.
And you can bet that I was listening to it on Game Changer as I came here, and it gets to runners at second and third, and Babin Bunt shows up, and he puts the pressure on them every single time.
You know, I covering that group last year was so fun for me, you know, and I got really enamored with Brady Rodriguez. I just thought the world of him, and it, you know, I've been trying to find some clips of last year's game I did, a couple games I did, and talking about Brady and what I thought about him. You know, losing a player like that is huge, but they lost so much. You know, the Hoff kid, Lacoste behind the plate, you know, they lose. We talked about this before, but, you know, I don't think people realized how good Nate Babin was last year as their number 2.
Right.
I mean, at times, him and Caden Amy could have been number 1s together.
Correct.
You know, he was a heavy fastball throwing, strike throwing machine.
Right. And when you talk about heavy, it means when you catch it, it hurts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
Not
right.
that it's 94.
Nope.
He can throw it to where, and he's another one that's playing at the next level.
Yep.
Right.
Is it Xavier now?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a thing about that. You know, he'll as you said about Jeremy Harper, he'll woe is me all day long about and then go out and win 25 games this year. You know, and just.
And you talked about the small ball part. You know, we'll call it small ball, but I just think it's good baseball.
Absolutely.
What Coach Babin does, and I've said this for the entire last year, his 7, 8, and 9 guys last year, which in most high school baseball, you're kind of going to give up something. Those kids could put a bunt down.
Yep.
They hit and run well. They hit balls to the opposite side to move runs over. And if they didn't, they sat.
Right. Right.
And he was adamant about it. Like, I watched a playoff game where a kid didn't execute. You didn't come back up to the plate. So he teaches it, he preaches it, he coaches it, and they execute it phenomenally.
Well, that's the thing. You know, high school kids are still high school kids. You put the ball in play, put pressure on them, and let them beat themselves. And he is the textbook perfect example of that. You know,
yes, he is.
He plays to what he's got, and he gets the most out of them. And it's impressive to watch. It's mortifying to try to coach against it because you know it's coming. But hats off to my boy Babin because he gets it done year after year wherever he's at. So
well, and look, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, you know, if Hayes Holton is one of the best pitchers around. Caden Amy is right there up with him. You know, he's a lefty that's dominant. He's actually done a great job at the plate this year. Trey Diodane, who I think is one of the most athletic players around, plays center field for them. He's an absolute menace on the base paths, and he's starting to hit the ball from extra base hits. So
my hope that is tomorrow night when I get there that I get to see Caden and Connor Smith dueling each other. That's going to be get your popcorn ready fun right there.
That would be good. And look, both those teams have some other arms. You know, the Kier kid, you know, for Pope can really throw it. He's done really well. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Neely throw tomorrow for North Shore. Maybe a Cale Bricker throw. You know, Walbacher's been coming in and throwing him in relief, but he's been so good at the plate. But that's a fantastic matchup tomorrow. I'm a little jealous of you there. St. Thomas Aquinas, Coach Boomer Nunez, you know, Boomer, man. Look, they're 2-2.
Boomer and Pop.
Boomer don't do anything without Pop, right?
Well, Pop's been my assistant for the past 5 years, and you talk about it. I take credit and love the fact that I was an assistant for Jeff Drag, but I loved having, you know, all the assistants I had. But Coach Pop kept me out of a lot of situations. There's some pictures online somewhere of him trying to. And I'm probably 3 times his size, but he's trying to pull me back and making calls for me across the field. But he's one of the best strategic minds that there is as well. So him and Boomer are going to be scary together because I think they coached together last at Lakeshore probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Only headed to Sulphur there, right?
Yeah, it's
no big deal.
Yeah, so they'll that tandem together is going to be fun, and I got to see them, like I said, the night that Hannon lost, unfortunately. But then I told Cass I wasn't coming back, and I didn't, and they won the next 2. So I think we found the problem here. So well,
look, they start 2-2 and lose 2 or 3 to Hannon. You know, I I didn't expect that. I'll be
I didn't
honest
either.
with you. I would tell Cass that, and I told Boomer that. But I think Hannon's proving to be
Legit.
a pretty good
Yeah.
baseball team, right? But same thing. We talk about these teams that have lost some games early that maybe you don't expect to lose, or you lose a series you don't expect to lose. You go lose 2 or 3. You come back and you rebound and you
sweep
beat Laranja.
those 3 arms.
3. That's an impressive feat.
Yes.
And I think Boomer told me they had 3 grand slams in one game. I think it was game 2. So impressive. But he's doing a great job over there. This is another really good district I'm excited about.
So maybe that, I hate to wish it, but, if Laranja now follows that same suit, they go this week. They've got, it looks like this weekend they got Northshore, Pope, and French settlement. So
yeah,
that could go
either way.
Fire in their, a little piss and vinegar, I guess I can say that, in their blood. They might return the favor there too. It's a circle of life. So
yeah, we're not on we're not on the radio.
Okay.
So if something slips, it's okay. We'll let it ride. North Lake Christian, this is another intriguing team to me. I feel like they've had the same lineup for 3 years, and it's when is it going to come and click? I think they're very talented. Max Millett, who's their center fielder, he's committed to Nunez as well. He's fantastic. He's tough as nails. Big Luke McAdams,
he's been there forever.
Yeah, he has. He's a 10th year senior, I believe. So, the Deggans kid's been really good. Stu Covey's been really good for them. Eli Shoemake, who's probably their ace, he's out for a couple of weeks with some arm soreness. I don't know the extent of that, but I'm hoping that he comes back real soon. But that's another team that I think could go compete. And in this district, it's tough, but they're full of, upperclassmen. So, we'll see what Coach Feasting and those guys do, but don't be surprised to see them here late in the season. French Settlement, they've had a pretty good start. Their 4 losses are not to be ashamed of. They're sitting there at 11, power ranking. They played some really good teams. They've put up numbers. Yeah. I know that every time I'm looking at them, they've put up numbers. So it might be a swing it year for them, but I'm excited to get over there and cover them as well. And then Independence is sitting there at 0-5, and it's one of those, Independence is one of those teams you just don't want to play because they're so athletic and so talented that when they put it together, you're going to be in a bind, So it's interesting. Well, look, that wraps up kind of the baseball preview, right? And we did want to cover baseball more tonight because it's, the coverage. We'll have kind of a similar thing next week with softball. We'll have some coaches on. Excited about that. Some big baseball and softball matchups this week that I wanted to talk about. Tomorrow night, you've got Northshore and Pope John Paul. You'll be doing that for Varsity Sports now, right? Yeah. Eric Ritchie and that group. Big shout out to Eric. They do a phenomenal job with telecast and getting high school sports out there. St. Thomas Aquinas is at Fontainebleau. That's another one that I'm really excited about. 2 talented teams that somebody's got to lose, right? Mandeville heads to Holy Cross. One thing about Coach Benoit is he's going to play the Catholic League a lot.
And he's going to look good doing it too.
Yeah, well, it helps to have the horses he has. And I tell people all the time, what's scary about Mandeville being so talented is Coach Benoit is so good at getting what he needs out of it, and he'll steal wins.
Oh, absolutely.
He'll get you wins that you maybe didn't think you would get. But he's a phenomenal coach. They do a great job over there. And then Catholic is at Slidell. I think Cam would say, and I won't put words in Coach Lewis's mouth at Slidell, but Cam would say, I just want to see how we compete. I don't really care what we do, right? But we got Catholic coming to our house. Like, we've got to play well.
Right.
We got to go compete and see what we have. They've got some young pitchers that if things don't go well, what do you do, right? But, the University of Catholic is very good. They've got one of the better lineups in the state.
Last year, and
they did.
Played well with
them. They very much so did. And then on Friday and Saturday, I think it's a great matchup. Fontainebleau heads to Sam Houston. So we'll get to see, Tanner Conley, face that Sam Houston lineup. Sam Houston's got Galley and some other pitchers that are really good to face Fontainebleau's kind of potent hitting attack. And then in softball tonight, I'm sure this is a final. I haven't seen it yet. Coach Nettie and North Shore are at Ponchatoula. And then tomorrow, two really great matchups. Mandeville is at North Lake Christian. I think that's going to be two teams that are going to fight for some district championships there.
Coach Willie, he does a fantastic job.
Willie, and look, his daughter Abigail is pretty talented. So we'll see. I think she might still be playing basketball. So because they play tonight, so she might be available tomorrow.
I promise you, she's been throwing a softball.
Oh, there's no doubt. Coach Willie would never not allow that. And then French Settlement. We talked about Malloy Miles is at Zachary. Another chance for us to go see what French Settlement does kind of outside of it. Last news of the night on the football side, we've had some coaching changes, some big ones. Obviously, we mentioned Coach Salim at Springfield getting that head coaching job. He's put together a pretty good staff. For those that remember, Coach Hutch Gonzalez, who was at Mandeville, goes to be Live Oaks head coach. He'll be their offensive coordinator, right? So at Springfield. So that's an exciting time for Springfield. Coach Scott Shaffett, who ran that LFCA All-Star game, I got to coach for him in that game. Fantastic man. I think the world of Ponchatoula and the talent they have on the football side. They've got a young man at quarterback, Oakwan. They've got who will be a junior this year. I think maybe hands down the best player around, and that's Will Walker. He's going to be a junior. He's absolutely superb. We'll be watching him at the next level for sure. Coach Womack leaves North Shore as the defensive coordinator to head over to Fontainebleau. That's another program that needs some energy. They've got some talent. Can they get the numbers up where they need them to be at Fontainebleau? Because they've got a unique group of kids there that remind me a lot of North Shore. But, thinking back to North Shore last year, they were in every game. Right. That defense played very, very well. So I look forward to Coach Womack bringing that same defensive tenacity over to Fontainebleau and see what the Bulldogs do. Coach Bonvillain stays at Lakeshore and gets the head coaching job there when Coach Indes leaves. Coach Bonvillain's a younger coach. He was at UL, an offensive guy. Talking to him, they're going to run a similar offense. They're going to kind of keep things somewhat the same, but maybe a little twist on Coach Bonvillain's stuff. Look, I'll tell you that might be the hardest thing to coach against, and the way that they ran it there and Brody Loudermilk coming back, it's hard to defend the wing tee when you're defending 10. To defend the wing tee with 11, and they'll put Brody in the shotgun and run the same concepts out of it. It's a nightmare for defenses. But that's an exciting time there. And then, the big news, we touched on this a little bit, Coach Ken Sears, stepping down at St. Paul's. That's a unique situation. I think when somebody's there for 27 years, you got to give Coach his flowers, absolutely. Right? They've been a perennial, 8, 9, 10 win team every year. When people ask me my opinion about St. Paul's, I'm very honest in what I think, right? I think they do more with less than a lot of their competition, right? And that's not a knock on the school, right? But people want to compare St. Paul's to John Curtis or Rummel or, some of these other private schools. It's different. It's different on the North Shore, right? But they've done, he in particular has done a phenomenal job. I'm interested to see what happens there because I think it's one of the best staffs around on the North Shore. Great defensive coordinator. Ken Sears Jr. is our offensive coordinator. We'll see what happens there.
Great Mike Stant.
The greatest
defensive line.
The greatest official on the North Shore, right? You want to go watch a basketball game, you make sure Stant's got the whistle in his mouth. It's a good one. But he's phenomenal. He coached in that LFCA All-Star game as well, but he's an offensive line legend, And look, they've got some returning guys up front that are very good. So that's an exciting time. So Coach, last thoughts here before we leave on season 1, episode 1. It's our first show.
That's it. Enjoyed it, man. I'm looking forward to not just the baseball season, but touching on all these sports we're talking about with softball. Good luck to all the locals in the soccer championships. Coach Nathan Peters in particular at Hannon. Good luck to you guys on Thursday night and all the other people who are competing. Just look forward to to seeing how this thing rolls out moving forward. I'm enjoying it and enjoying getting to go see games and being able, like I went to St. Paul's the other night and I stood in the bullpen with Mick Nunez, and he coached there forever, and he was like, I think I'm going home. I was like, it's a pretty good feeling when you can be home before, no raking. No,
I'm not dragging the field. I'm not, nope.
I do miss that song, but, at the same time, it's nice to be able to go see all my buddies. Like I said, I'm legitimately pulling for, I could make a phone call right now to any of these coaches that we talked about. And, if I'm in a bind, I know they can come. It's a unique fraternity of friends that, we want to beat each other. But at the same time, at the end of the day, they're all fantastic guys, and it made it a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to seeing all those guys be successful this season. So,
yeah, and look, I know you made it to Nunez. I don't want to leave Nunez out. We'll have a big feature on them this week. We're going to start doing some new stuff for them, but they sit at 4-3 on the season. Very tough conference. They got Delgado and LSUE in there. They're on the rise. Right. I love the program.
Absolutely.
If you don't follow Nunez, go follow them. If you're a fan of high school baseball in the area, you will know 90% of the kids, right? And if you have not been to a game, and we'll do some stuff to help them out, getting some folks there, but it is one of the neatest places to go watch a baseball game. They can swing it, and they hit a lot of balls out.
Yeah, it's a unique atmosphere and a setting for any baseball, much less a college guy who can swing it ginormously. And I went to a fall game this past fall and watched them play Pearl River, and in a doubleheader, I think there was combined 17 home runs.
Oh my God!
In less than 6 hours. So the ball flies there. Nephew, that is a pitcher at Nunez. Keep it down.
Yes. Yeah. Don't elevate a ball over there. You're not throwing it by anybody.
That's right.
They've got 12 home runs so far on the season. It's nothing to be ashamed of. They head to, I think, Mississippi Gulf Coast this week. So they've got, they play the gauntlet of Mississippi JUCOs. It's an exciting time there, and I'm really excited about getting to cover them. So last but not least, thanks again to Game Day Cuts. Phenomenal place. If you haven't been here, owner Brad Reshoot, they've done a great job at opening a place that you feel comfortable in. Men, young men, boys, come in and get your hair cut. For the men that want some other things, they do have facials now. They have scalp massages. They have beard washes, beard trims.
I'm watching a video of Brad show how that works up there.
Yeah. There's everything's here. We've got some Northshore prep stuff. We've got a bunch of college stuff. There's Landon Ibieta from Mandeville on the wall, and Cooper Winchester. Kate Anderson. Every Timmons that ever existed. It's all over the place. So exciting place to be. We thank you all for joining. Thanks again to Game Day Cuts, and look forward to seeing you all next week.
Absolutely.